Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to be showing you how to cut a little daisy fringe on yourself. I feel like these are like really in at the moment. They have been for a while, but I feel like they're not going anywhere and they're quite easy to cut on yourself actually, so I just thought I'd run through that. Things that you'll need are a pair of scissors, preferably cutting scissors. If you don't have like proper hairdressing scissors, just at least make sure that your scissors are really sharp and preferably brand new, so that they've never been used on like paper or anything, because that will really blunt the scissors and then you'll get split ends and stuff. So I would just recommend buying a new pair of scissors before you cut your hair. And like, yeah, if you can get some little hairdressing scissors, that's always a shout. A cutting comb or any comb that you have. Cutting combs are helpful because they have this little tooth at the front, which it's like good for sectioning, but it's not an essential. Then you're going to want some clips for sectioning, probably like minimum 2, but 3 or 4 might make your life a bit easier. And finally, for styling, you just want a round brush and a hairdryer. Where's my hairdryer? I don't know. A round brush and a hairdryer. And you want to get a round brush that's kind of like the same size as your forehead, because that's probably going to be the length of your fringe. If it's too big, it will just be difficult to style your fringe basically. But yeah, also I'm going to be cutting my hair wet, so the first thing that you want to do is wash your hair, and then you can cut it wet, because it's really hard to cut dry hair because it's like fluffy and it doesn't sit where you want it to sit. So I'm going to go wash my hair and then I'll be right back and I'll just like get straight into how to cut it. Okay, so just washed my hair, ready to cut it, because it is easier to cut wet, but there are actually a few things that I would recommend doing while your hair's still dry. When your hair's wet, it's usually a lot straighter and it's a lot more flat, and it's also a lot more thin. Like if you take a section of your hair and you look at it and you think you can like gauge the thickness of it, once it dries it goes way fluffier and it always looks much thicker. So before you start cutting your hair, I would actually recommend, while your hair's still dry, sectioning off your hair and deciding how thick you actually want the fringe to be, and then like making a mental note of how much hair you've taken, like as in where the parting is, and taking the exact same amount, because you might accidentally cut too much if you're basing it off of how thick you think it feels while it's wet. Like once you've dried it, you'll be like, oh, that was a lot of hair. And also I'd recommend, because your hair is like usually straighter and flatter when it's wet, I'd recommend like cutting the very first section. So part your hair in the middle, and then take a really small triangle. Take a small triangle at the very like front, like this. So a diagonal there and a diagonal there. And then, so for some background, if your hair was really long, this would be different. If you had dry hair and it was really long, you could take this little section and it would just fall flat in front of your face. For me, I'm actually trying to turn this into a daisy fringe, because I tried to cut a front fringe about a month and a half ago. Like I wanted like a really fine wispy front fringe, and then I cut it and I hated it. So I just like brushed it to the side every day and tried to make it disappear. I was like clipping it out of the way, and now I feel like it's just about long enough that I can start to turn it into a daisy fringe. But in an ideal world, this would be longer. So I would actually take my hair, my dry hair, brush it forward and see where the hair sits on your face, and then I would want to cut the whole front section dry to about my nose. Obviously mine is much shorter. If I put it down, it's about the nose, but that just kind of shows like how much hair has the potential to bounce back up. And it's starting to dry already and it's only been a few seconds, but it will bounce up a lot. So it's best to cut it dry so that you can actually imagine where it will sit. Then go and wash your hair. Only cut this very front section. Go and wash your hair. Then when you come back and you take these sections, they might seem too long, but you'll just have to trust that that was like the guide that you've given yourself for when it's wet, you know? Okay, so now you've washed your hair, you've got your little guide, and you're about to start the actual haircut. The first thing you want to do is take that same little triangle again. Yours will already be the right length because you've just cut it. Mine isn't the right length because this is like a weird haircut that's like growing out. But I'm just going to put it straight down And I just want to make sure that these are the same length. So now they're matching. Okay, so now you want to split it in half again, back into a middle parting, and you're going to focus on one section at a time. So I'm going to clip this out of the way just to be like, just to make it a bit more clear. And then you want to decide how thick you want the section to be. So to start with, I'm going to take about this much. And clip the rest of my hair out of my way. Okay, now you just want to take diagonal sections back following the first section that you took. So it was like this angle. And then if you imagine a parallel line between the section that you're taking and the angle that you want to cut out. So you want to pull the hair directly out like this, and then you want to make sure that you're cutting on a diagonal parallel to the parting. And the reason that you want to do that is because then if you take the same angle on the other side and you pull it to the same direction and you cut it in the same angle, both sides will be symmetrical. So the angle of the parting is really just going to be a guide. The more what's the word? I don't know the word I'm looking for. Like the sharper the angle of the triangle is, the more of like a gradient you're gonna get. If the triangle was like really flat and you pulled it out pretty straight and you cut it on this angle, obviously you're gonna have a very like soft gradient. Whereas if you pulled it really, really far over here and then you cut it basically in a straight line, when you bring that over, this is going to be so much shorter than this. So I think like a middle ground is always a safe bet, you know, because it can be too graduated and then it looks like really weird and long and it doesn't give you like the nice sweeping shape that you're looking for. Bearing in mind that everything that you're doing is probably going to be a little bit longer than mine, because in an ideal world my hair would be slightly longer, but I'm just working with what I've got. So this front section, this first section is actually already done because I've tried to blend this in before. But just as an example. Then I'm going to cut. And then when I bring it over, you can see that this is longer and this is shorter. And that's because this has travelled a further distance to come all the way over here to be cut on a diagonal, and that's the initial shape already, you can see. And then just keep taking small sections back and incorporating more hair, and then your fringe will just get thicker and thicker. Try really hard to keep that angle exactly the same every time. As you go further back, this section will start to get longer and longer, so that's gonna like really start to tie in. So yeah, the first section that you take, it'll probably feel really short, but then as you go further back, because it's travelling a further distance, it does get longer and longer, and then it gives you that curtain-y sweeping thing. I always call this a daisy fringe. It's definitely called a curtain. Well, it's called a curtain bang, and I just don't like the word bang because like we're English. But I call it a daisy fringe, and then I don't think I've ever heard anyone else actually say that. I don't know where I got it from or if I made it up, but like, I don't know. and then it will look something like this. But when you brush it like that again, then the shape's going to start to become really clear. I might incorporate more hair into this in a minute, but I think I'm going to do the other side first, and then I'll see, and I might dry it and then I'll decide. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I really want to make sure that I've got exactly the same amount of hair from both sides, so I'll use this as a guide, and then just try and get that like as symmetrical as you can. Okay, I think that's pretty symmetrical. So then I'll clip this out of my way. And then I'm going to clip this out of the way as well so that I don't accidentally brush it into like this side. And then I'll just do exactly the same thing on this side. See here how it's like I don't know, weirdly long and skinny? That means I've like angled my fingers a bit too much, whereas on the other side I must have been a little bit flatter. So then I'm just gonna look at that again. Yeah, now it's like that part wants to come off because I must have not been following this angle properly before. Okay. That looks terrible. And now I'm just going to check that the lengths are the same, because I obviously want this to be symmetrical. This side is still too long. Okay. You can also check the length by like brushing everything forward and just making sure that it looks pretty symmetrical. Now I'm going to dry off my fringe and I'll dry off the rest of my hair, and then once it's all dried off we'll be able to see how it's going to sit. But to be honest, like, it's drying pretty well. It's kind of drying in the exact right shape, which is probably means it's a pretty good cut. Like, that's the goal, isn't it? But yeah, I'm gonna go and dry my hair and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've dried off the rest of my hair. This is how the fringe is looking. Super cute. To be fair, I feel like it's looking fine. Like, I don't think I would tweak this. But yeah, hopefully you found that helpful. If you did need to like do anything to it, you would basically just take your hairbrush, take your comb and brush it forwards like this, and then with your scissors kind of like chop into it to break up the line. But I'm actually quite happy with how it's sitting, and if I fluff it up too much it might kind of like be a bit too wispy. Sometimes having it a little bit heavier helps it to sit in the right position because it's got a little bit more weight to it. So I'm actually happy with this. I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm happy with the length. Obviously I've just blow dried it, so it's a bit fluffier than it will be, but in like half an hour, like if you were actually living a regular day, it would kind of just drop out a little bit and like sit a little bit flatter against your forehead, which is slightly more natural looking. Like, it's just nice, isn't it? It's a nice amount of hair. Like, it's visible, but it's not too much. And yeah, that's how you cut a daisy fringe. But yeah, hopefully you found that helpful. If you do have any questions, just leave me a comment down below. And yeah, I think that's basically it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!